Okay, so welcome to Conscious Conversations and what I like to call HOPE. And the reason why I like the acronym HOPE is because it's hearing other people's experiences. Now, one of the most difficult things with anxiety is we don't really sort of talk about it. So we feel like we're the only person going through what we're experiencing, and we often feel alone. So I thought it'd be really cool to kind of share our own individual experiences on our own healing journeys, speak to people that are on their journey, find out a little bit more about themselves. My name is Shane Heron. I'm the anxiety specialist. I help people overcome anxiety through my somatic release technique. And I essentially help people to kind of connect to their bodies and reconnect back with their hearts. So today I've got Toby Watkins with me, and he is a client of mine, or he's worked with me a couple of times in the past. So Toby, tell me more about yourself and what your experiences, what you've been sort of experiencing yourself.
Thank you very much. Hey, so yeah, basically a couple back in 2019, I kind of went through an event which caused a kind of, well, triggered anxiety for me. Something I've always had a little bit of like minor anxiety in the past, but then this kind of thing that happened to me, which I'm not going to go into, but triggered quite a lot of anxiety, and kind of made me then I'm quite in touch with everything in terms of my emotions and stuff. So I know I was quite lucky in the fact that I noticed it quite early on. I know a lot of people try and probably numb the feelings and kind of bury their head in the sand. I was quite early on realized that there was something not quite right with my kind of brain. And my immediate port of call was to go to a CBT therapist to try and get help that way. And I had a couple sessions with a CBT therapist, which did, it was comforting, but it wasn't for me. It was kind of like the anxiety. There wasn't any thoughts that triggered it. It was just a feeling. And certain, I mean, I just couldn't put a finger on what was triggering it. It wasn't my thought process. I know a lot of people sometimes have traumas that happened in the past that kind of mean that their brain and the way they think then triggers them to feel a certain way. I didn't have that. I've been very lucky that my brain works in a good way, but for some reason I was just getting these bodily sensations of anxiety. So I actually then kind of a couple months, probably about 7 months later, whilst on Instagram, saw a post from Shane. I think it was an infographic or something about bottom-up approach and getting into the body first and then sorting out that feeling in the body and then reconnecting to the mind that way. And it really like struck a chord. I was like, okay, this is where I need to go. This somatic approach is what I need to have, because it's not my thoughts that are making me anxious. It's just the anxiety comes first and then the thoughts follow, because the thoughts are then like, oh my God, I'm going to be stuck like this forever. Or is it something in my environment? Is it my family? Is it my girlfriend? Is it my job? And then you get yourself in a rabbit hole of then going down that whole thing, trying to sort the anxiety out with your thoughts, which, as I now know, is like the most kind of counterproductive thing to do. So I then booked in a session with Shane with you, and genuinely felt like the biggest just shift in one session, going from like feeling really disconnected and kind of like weird to then feeling this release, feeling that like knot in my stomach, which I'd had for weeks, just dissipate. So yeah, ever since that, I've obviously then just been really interested in this approach and feel like more people need to know about it because it's nuts.
So I'll talk a little bit more about the bottom up versus top down approaches. So most therapies that people come across with anxiety, it's based on a top down approach where it's focused on your thinking or what's happening cognitively, so what's happening in your head. But the problem is with that is that our thoughts are being dictated by the nervous system state that we're in. So we have our thoughts in our head, we've got our feelings, so for example, in our heart, and we've got our kind of survival response in our kind of gut. If you imagine it that way. You can even imagine it in, the old triune brain system. It's an old model, but it still applies in terms of just using it as a way to explain things, where you have your neocortex, your logical thinking part, you've got your amygdala, your emotional, your limbic system, and you have your brainstem of your survival responses. Now, because anxiety is a survival response, it's yourself going into like a fight and flight state. When you're in that state, once that's activated, your rational brain's switched off. So all your logical, rational thinking processes aren't available to you. So you can do all the cognitive stuff, you can understand it, you can be at peace with it. But if your body still senses an element of danger for wherever it is, or there's unexpressed emotions, those unexpressed emotions can trigger your body into these kind of survival responses of either what I call the yellow zone, fight and flight state, or the red zone of disconnection. So when that yellow zone or red zone is activated, that is going to then impact your whole system. It's going to impact your thoughts. And what we want to do is we first want to get yourself out of the survival zone first. Because until you get yourself out of the survival zone, your body's only priority is going to be safety. And then that's going to impact all your thoughts. You can have negative thoughts, anxious thoughts. As soon as you recognize it, you have to bring yourself down to safety. So you was noticing you was having these anxious thoughts about kind of like, you know, what was you thinking about? What was it kind of like making you, what was the irrational things you was thinking?
The rational, irrational? Well,
When you was experiencing anxiety, you was questioning, you know, you was questioning things about your relationship, things like that. You was questioning whether, you know, things that you knew wasn't necessarily true, but it really made you question yourself.
100%. It just kind of, I guess the main thing I was looking for is I remember, so when I was a kid, I used to get really bad homesickness and like separation anxiety, which is the first time I ever felt that feeling of like disconnect and kind of like so overwhelmed that like nothing really seemed fun anymore. You were just so full of panic that like you couldn't connect to your family and friends. Like you couldn't see anything, nothing really seemed safe. Like nothing was going to bring you back into yourself until, so say for example, I was doing a sleepover at a friend's house or whatever. I'd get there, I'd be at home, I'd be calm, collected, looking forward to the sleepover. The minute mum and dad dropped me off, I'd be like, oh my God, overwhelmed, hate it, crying, don't want to be there. Until the person I was staying at's mum called my mum to come pick me up. And the minute my mum came back, the feeling went, and you're like, oh, there we go, fine, I'm myself again. I felt connected again. And then I almost felt like, I was like, oh, what am I panicking about? I can do the sleepover. So then be like, okay, mum would then go home, and then I'd be like, no, my God, I can't do it. And then she'd come back and pick me up again. It was the same feeling for me. Like this anxiety is like, I was looking for a release that back in the day used to be my mum or my dad coming to pick me up. Now as an adult, I was feeling this overwhelm, but I couldn't see what the release would be. Like it wasn't, you know, there was no safe place. It was kind of like, oh my God, I feel this feeling. I feel disconnected, but like, I don't know where the safe place is. So then I started looking for like, oh, maybe it's my job. Or maybe it's because I'm not maybe it's my relationship, maybe it's my, you know, all of these different things that you have control of. I was like, maybe I need to control one of these things to turn this panic off. So then you get yourself into a rabbit hole of like, oh my God, but it's not that, but I don't know what's going to give me this release. And you just get this panic state of like, oh my God, I'm gonna be like this forever because I can't find what the release is. And then when we learned the technique, I was like, okay, I can go into my body and chill out this part of my brain. It's this kind of like, I guess it's like the panic button just gets stuck on. It's a dysregulation between your brain not establishing that you're now safe and your body feeling that same thing. So you could be in the safest environment ever with your family or your girlfriend, whatever, but your body for some reason just thinks, fuck, something's not right. And then that's when the panic starts. So learning to like breathe and get into the body and feel comfortable in the body is like, it basically just having your own off button on demand. Sometimes it's harder. I'm not saying it's always easy. Sometimes it's harder than, you know, than just turning it off. But being able to realize that you have a tool that you can then implement takes away a lot of that panic and actually allows you to go back into that green zone a lot quicker. So
and that's the hard thing. Like we don't recognize what the issue is sometimes. And, you know, a lot of my clients, they'll have a great life. They'll have, you know, great family, great friends, their job's going fine, and yet they still find it hard to enjoy life. They still feel disconnected, still find they still feel like something's missing in their life. And ultimately, like you notice, the answer is connection, but it's very hard to even connect with others unless we feel kind of connected to ourselves. And the problem is that we've become so in our heads about things. Thinking's great, but we need to come back to our body. We need to come back to our feelings. When you're born very much in your body. If you see a toddler, you know, when they feel their emotions, instantly they're expressing emotions. You know, if they're angry, it's the biggest temper tantrum. If they're sad, they're crying their eyes out. Now, yes, we do have to have some ability to have some emotional regulation, but we've become so overwhelmed with what we feel because of our kind of emotional pain that's just built up over time. Naturally, what the body does, it just starts to disconnect. And then we don't even recognize what we're feeling because we're just disconnected from our bodies. So the somatic release technique or the somatic release process that I've essentially created is about reconnecting to your body. And then as you reconnect to your body, you're going to notice what's either tense and tight and locked down. That's like that red zone containment. And your body does this to kind of protect yourself from the emotions, the energy, the stress that's kind of running riot in your body. Now, you'll either notice that tension or you notice the anxiety and the aliveness. So sometimes people are only first noticing anxiety. that they haven't noticed their whole entire life, because they've spent their life in this disconnected state, in a kind of functional freeze, where you can still absolutely survive and go about your business. I mean, when I first kind of started experiencing anxiety, my life was great. I had a good relationship, or on the surface, it was a great relationship. My business was really successful. And yet, all of a sudden, I started having panic attacks. And essentially what it was that over time, my ability to just ignore things or push things down, suppress things, has its limit. And then when we exceed that limit, it starts to overspill. So I can no longer just ignore my emotions, ignore my stress, and just push it down into my body. It started overspinning, and that's when I first started experiencing panic attacks. So you was noticing, yourself feeling what you're feeling. And then tell me a little bit about your experience with the process. So when we had that sort of session, you started connecting to your body. What was that like?
It was genuine. So I had it. We've had sessions once after a breakup last year, and again, I mean, it was an overwhelm of emotion. All rash, that was a little bit more controlled, I guess. And you kind of understood why I was feeling a bit overwhelmed, because although it was, it was tough to go through a breakup, I kind of understood that. But we kind of worked through it and went to those. I guess the breakup it triggered a little bit of anxiety. And our first session, we went through it kind of. I remember you taking me back to the first time I ever felt anxiety, which was that homesick feeling. And when you're in that calm state, kind of getting in touch with that feeling it, and then using the knowledge you have now and kind of imagining myself as older 24-year-old me comforting 6-year-old me when I felt that. And like what you'd say is, if you're like an older brother or a dad, being like, hey, look, this is normal. You're feeling anxiety away from your parents. You're in a new environment. Completely normal to feel it, but don't worry, you're going to be fine. These are just feelings, and I'm pretty sure you'll realize that you'll have a good time away from your parents, with your friends, whatever, and they'll be back tomorrow. They're not going away forever, so just chill, try and enjoy it. And like doing that, I genuinely felt like this knot that was in my stomach just go, and then like tears, like not just like water coming out my eyes. And it was crazy. It was the nicest feeling ever. And then I had it again. I remember in our last session recently, like a month ago, the same thing, like a similar feeling of going back to me being at school, being a kid. I remember my the nurse at school being like, just persevere, get through it. Like no one told me. I always had this knot in my stomach at school because I was anxious. I didn't know it was anxiety, so I thought, oh, I've got a stomach ache, or I'm getting a stomach bug, or I've pulled muscles in my stomach. I always just had this feeling, but no one ever told me that it was anxiety. I was always just told, persevere, you haven't got any symptoms, you haven't got a temperature, you haven't got the shits, you're not ill, so just get on with it. And of course, as we all know, like pushing those feelings away only makes them stronger. So then I remember just being sat in the med center at school with this stomach ache that I kind of, if I'm honest, like deep down, I was like, this is kind of in my head. Like I clearly haven't got any physical symptoms, but I've just got this knot, but not knowing it was that. Going back to that person again, that like 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old me, with the knowledge I know now, being like, hey, you're at school, you're getting a bit anxious, you're around new people, blah, blah. These are completely normal feelings. Your body's just on a little bit of high alert, but it's fine. You can feel them and it will go. You'll realize, that everything's all right. You're in a safe environment. Someone had told me that at that age, you'd be like, oh, that's just anxiety. And you kind of just let it pass through. Whereas I was told to just persevere and get on with it. So being able to then like have that knowledge now and be in your subconscious and tell that younger you, again, I had that same feeling of relief again. And like that eye water, like my eyes watered, and I was like, fuck, it's just gone. That knot's just gone. And then now being able to like have those techniques and kind of, I guess I call it like doing my homework. Like even we occasionally have sessions when I need like a top up or whatever, but being able to do your own homework and like just implement it yourself whilst you're at home. And whenever you feel like a build up of emotion or a build up of stress, knowing that you're like, okay, sweet, I'm sat at the table now and I'm with people. I can't start doing my breathing now, but I know that I can get home and do it and release whatever's been in there. And the more that you practice that, the more it just becomes automatic. So you don't have to do it the whole time. When you get into states of overwhelm, I guess like you kind of have to like put yourself into manual and, manually get rid of that excess energy. Whereas once you then get yourself into a comfortable state in the green zone, you can kind of just, your body just does it automatically. You're like, okay, sweet, I'm safe. That was a little bit scary, but I'm safe. Whereas when you're kind of a little bit out of whack, if you've been stressed at work or whatever, you kind of have to do it on manual, and just do it yourself. But
But that's essentially what anxiety is. It's literally your body saying, "Hey, we're normally on autopilot. We normally do everything automatically, but we're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. We need your help in this moment." And when we went back and did the kind of the inner child process, essentially we're just reparenting ourselves, because ultimately, if we had that validation and that knowledge, that wisdom, the emotional intelligence to recognize, what I'm feeling is completely okay. It's okay to feel what I'm feeling. Like, honestly, most of my work is basically validating what someone's feeling and giving them permission to feel what they feel. Because when we don't know, or we don't think our feeling is bad or wrong, we either resist it, avoid it, or we judge it. And when we judge it, we disconnect from it. And when we do that, we don't allow just the natural process, the healing process of the body, because your emotions is just energy emotion. The idea is we experience life, we experience the emotion, we express it, and it passes through us. But if we have this emotional, this feeling where we don't feel safe enough to express it, where we're judging ourselves for being vulnerable, or we're judging ourselves for crying or having these natural human emotions, we contain it, we hold it in. And that tension builds up in the body, that stress builds up in the body, and then over time, that then leads to anxiety. So when you was going back, it was literally just saying this feeling, what you're feeling is normal. It's okay to feel this way, and just holding space for yourself, giving yourself permission to feel. And as you just sat with the feeling and with giving yourself compassion and the safety and the space to actually experience it, you felt it, you expressed it, you may get some emotions come up underneath the anxiety, and then it gets through to the other side, you know?
It's mad. Again, like going back to that 2019 thing. I mean, the main thing as well that struck a chord for me is when you talk about like the green zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone. And I remember before I even knew that kind of analogy, or not even analogy, like, well, yeah, I guess that analogy. I remember when I was in 2019, when I was really feeling quite shit. It was a combination of things. It was this thing that had happened whilst I was abroad, a new job, in a completely new world. I'd gone from being a full-time employee with a structure and a routine and, a Monday to Friday job, to then going freelance, which I thought was really exciting and I love it. And I've now got to a place where I love it again. But at the beginning, it was quite daunting because I felt like I was just floating, right? I didn't have anything solid to go to. I didn't have a workplace. I didn't have colleagues. I was just like living. It was weird. It was a very weird feeling. I felt very like bizarre. And that again caused this disconnect. And then I also changed houses as well. So it was all these different changes, which subconsciously just knocked me out of balance, even though they were all positive changes and things that I should have in theory been looking forward to. I felt completely out of like sync with my body. And all of these things that should have been getting me really excited, I just felt overwhelmed by and anxious by. And when I then feel kind of, I guess my body went into that like state of numbness because I was so overwhelmed by the anxiety that it then was like, okay, well, let's just feel numb. So then I was feeling really like kind of, I guess, almost like depressed. I was like, I guess that's what happens when you're depressed. I was like, oh my God, well, why the fuck does, normally that would bring me so much joy and it's not bringing me anything. I just don't really feel anything. This is so weird. This is so on me. I'm normally such a happy person. And like the smallest things get me excited, whether it's, like a nice dinner planned or whatever. I don't need big, exciting things to get me excited. Small little things normally get me so like buzzing. And I was just feeling completely not myself. And then I'd feel anxious. And I was like, oh, I feel really fucking anxious. I almost like preferred it as like, well, maybe the numbness is less painful. So then I'd go back to feeling numb. And then I'd be like, no, this is pretty shit. And then the anxiety would come back. And I was like, oh, this is equally as bad. I was going between the yellow and the red zone the whole time, but not actually breaking through the yellow zone and back into the green zone. I was just flicking between the two the whole time. And it was exhausting. And that's when I went and saw the CBT therapist. And she basically was like, oh, you've had a bit of trauma and a bit of change. And you just got to accept that you might feel like this for a bit. And I was like, what? Like that? The word? She's like, your thought process is completely fine. You haven't got any unhealthy thought processes. You're not. It's not like I'm one of those people who goes, oh, I'm a failure and I'm never going to be anything, and that's what makes me feel this way. It was not like that. I was like, I'm a really happy, positive, kind of confident person, but for some reason I just feel really disconnected right now. And that's when I saw you, and and we talked about these zones, and I was like, oh yeah, fuck, I'm just bouncing between these two zones because I'm out of disconnect. I'm disconnected from everything. And if you get into your body and you can feel it, it then allows you to pass through that anxiety and back into the green zone where you then are excited for things again.
And that's it. It's like your body has this natural healing process because your body wants to heal, right? Same way, if you cut your arm and the environment is clean and it doesn't need any kind of assistance with it, like it's not kind of wide open, your body will naturally heal, and your emotional pain is the same. So when it wasn't massively having anxious thoughts, but when we're having anxious thoughts, essentially that's the body trying to get your attention to say, hey, I need your attention. As you're thinking about that thought, it's making you feel a certain way. Your body's just trying to get you to feel. And sometimes that's where a lot of times people don't reach out for help because they kind of think, I've never been through any kind of thing seriously bad, there's nothing massively wrong with me sort of thing. But for whatever reason, they just feel disconnected or they can't experience joy. That's just a natural response of being in that red zone. And many people experience that same thing. They go from the red zone where they feel disconnected. They come back into their body as they can't start connecting. They experience all the anxiety, the fear, or the anger. Sometimes people, it's because it's a fight and flight response. A lot of times people associate like anxiety as like a mental health label. It's literally a symptom of being in that yellow zone. And then because that feels overwhelming, they then go back into the red zone. Now, if you notice, and that red zone is when you feel like numb or uptight, you feel very sort of stiff, you feel really sort of tense, but we don't even recognize this because we're not even connected to the body. As you go through the process, it starts from the red zone. If you used to connect your body, you'd notice either tension or numbness, where you might not feel completely connected to your body. As you then connect to your body, you're going to notice either anxiety or anger. If you breathe through it and relaxed through it, it would naturally turn to the vulnerable emotions underneath that if you allowed yourself to kind of keep through it. But most people get to the anxiety thing because it feels scary, it's about avoidance or moving away from, we just move backwards back into the red zone. If you allowed yourself to kind of naturally pass through, you'd get to the green zone, your vulnerable emotions underneath it that's kind of fueling the anxiety. As you get through that, you'd get back to love, peace, joy and connection and everything that we're looking for. But we've not been taught this process, I've already kind of recognized that path just from working with people and recognizing, we go through a certain set of sequences, we go through a certain set of emotions to get to kind of where we need to be. And it's just trusting the body. We think that we're so intelligent. We're so in our heads, we're so in our egos of things that we think that we have to know, we have to understand. But the reality is our body carries an intuitive wisdom. Your DNA, you'll carry genetics for thousands and thousands and thousands of years of survival. It's just learning to just trust yourself and trust your body. And trust in your experience, So if you could speak to your sort of like self back then when you was feeling anxious, what would you say to yourself? What would you be able to sort of, your biggest learnings about what we've done?
I guess the main thing would be like with this technique is I learned that I guess I probably thought that I was like, the reason I'm feeling this is because the brain chemicals that make you feel like serotonin, etc., that make you feel relaxed are just not there. And I don't know how I'm going to get them back. So I'm panicked. I'm like, how am I going to do it? What am I going to do? Is it CBT? That's going to take years. Oh my God, years of CBT to make me feel normal again. Oh my God, that's so panicky because I don't want to feel like this forever. And I don't want to even feel like this for a week. So, oh my God, years, like that's going to fucking hurt so much. And then you get yourself even more panicked, even more shit. Whereas when you realize, actually, no, they're all still there. They haven't gone anywhere. You just haven't got access to them right now because you're disconnected. So if you can connect, get back to the breath, get back into your body, feel what you need to feel and pass through, those chemicals come back and you're like, oh my God, yeah, they've always been there. They're just not, I just haven't got access to them right there. So I think if I'd known that back in 2019 when I was really going through it, like it would have saved myself a lot of pain, I guess, because I kind of just, and I guess I do believe that time is a healer, but I guess I was relying on that too much. I was like, oh, time's a healer and this will just go with time, which it did. Like, don't get me wrong, it got better with time, but I think that was just kind of a process of slowly letting it out. Whereas if I'd had this technique right at the beginning and known about this, I could have like got through that healing stuff a lot quicker. So that's one thing for sure. Like I kind of wish I'd known that.
But the thing is with like the whole brain chemical thing, it's a lie really, because if it was true, there'd actually be sort of tests we would do. So if there was like an imbalance of brain chemicals, you'd go to the doctors, they'd do a test, and they would go, oh look, your brain chemicals are out of balance. There isn't a test that actually exists for testing. So, when people are selling certain pharmaceutical drugs to counteract that, and they're not actually sort of testing to actually kind of prove if it actually needs, and even if there was, you'd expect them to be able to test to make sure that you're having the right dose or the right amounts. And it may be a case where your brain chemicals aren't like that, but that's like a symptom of the cause rather than the cause of the issue itself.
Mm.
So when you're stuck in that fight and flight state, or when your nervous system's in a state of dysregulation, your body's not functioning right. Your body's in a state of dis-ease. And this is why people kind of get ill, because they're not at peace themselves. And just like earlier when you were sort of saying that, it wasn't anything kind of major, but we just don't recognize that we have to have emotional hygiene. We have to have nervous system hygiene. So we've never learned how to actually connect with ourselves and how to release, how to surrender, how to let go. And life happens, my day-to-day life is stressful. I'm building up stress every single day. If I don't take that time just to be with myself, to connect to my body, connect to my breath, learn how to soften, learn how to surrender, and let and release these kind of emotions and stress, I'd experience anxiety all the time. It's a very, very natural response, but there's so much stigma against it because we apply these mental health labels that people are scared because, you go to your doctor, you get this mental health label, and then that's kind of like on your file. We kind of get scared to even reach out for help.
It's another thing. When people say, "Oh, he has anxiety" or "he has depression," it's like they don't have it; they're just experiencing it. It's like saying, "Oh, he has cold." It's like, no, you don't have. It's just got a cold. But and I guess that's the same thing. Like I used to really panic when people said, "Oh, you can't cure anxiety." That used to really panic me. And then people say, "Oh, you just have to manage it." I kind of saw that as like you just have to manage the symptoms. I'm like, no, you can get rid of it. Of course, you have to keep on top of it the whole time. It's not just like a one-stop cure. You get rid of it, but it's like, I guess you manage it to the point of extinction, but then you have to kind of keep doing the emotional hygiene in order to keep it extinct. Whereas before when people said it, you can just manage it, you can't cure it. That used to really freak me out. But I've now realized that it's like, okay, you can kind of manage it to the point of extinction and just keep on top of it. Whereas when I first heard that, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to live with this forever and just have to constantly be fighting this thing. I was like, if you go a little bit deeper, no, you can kind of get to the source of it and manage it to the point of extinction. That's the best way to describe it, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of time it's just misunderstanding. So when we actually have understand the context and the emotional intelligence to actually understand what's happening in the body, and we understand anxiety, it takes away a lot of the judgment, it takes away a lot of the shame of what we're experiencing, because we kind of judge ourselves. We think, oh my God, is there something wrong with us? Is there something kind of like broken sort of thing? We kind of have these kind of thoughts. Am I stuck like this? These are very, very kind of common anxious thoughts, but it's just, what anxiety recovery essentially means is that you're no longer in that state of anxiety, but you have the tools and the resilience to experience your emotions without getting pushed into these kind of states. But you're also having the resilience to be able to actually practice regulation, practice releasing. Same way that, if you didn't shower every single day, you'd start to smell. You don't shower a couple of times, go, oh, now I'm clean, now I don't have to ever shower. It takes at least a basic sort of maintenance. Now, same with brushing my teeth. If I didn't brush my teeth for months and months and months and months, whatever, my teeth would probably be in a bad way. I'd have to go to a dentist. They'd have to do sort of a lot of dental work. That's essentially kind of like doing the kind of one-to-one work with me. After you've done that, you still have to maintain a low level of taking care of yourself, like a maintenance. And that's where, where you're noticing, I'm noticing I'm feeling a certain way. Might not be able to kind of do it right there and then in terms of, sit there and regulate and practice connecting to your breath and your body. But that you give yourself and make that time for yourself. And that's where you're essentially taking responsibility for your feelings. But it's first, we learn how to self-regulate. That's what self-regulation is. We learn self-regulation through co-regulation. So where we was kind of like doing it together, as we was going through the process, your body goes, this is how we do it. And then it just gets better and better over time. So everything we learn goes through these 4 phases. It's like when you learn to drive a car, you go through unconscious incompetence. You don't know you're not good at it. Same way, like say, we don't know we're not good at regulating our emotions because it's, we don't even know it even exists. And then we have conscious incompetence. So this is when people first recognizing they're experiencing anxiety and they go, I'm recognizing I'm feeling a certain way. This is where we recognize we don't have good emotional regulation. And then we have, with enough practice, conscious competence. So this is where we're practicing the self-regulation or the co-regulation together. You get good at being able to bring yourself out of these sort of states. You get good at being able to release and allow these emotions to pass through you with the somatic release technique. And then after a while, you eventually get to unconscious competence. So for now, for myself, like I was working with a guy a few weeks back, I'm studying with a new sort of therapy. As we was having some supervision, he noticed that my body spoke, my body expressed. So your body's always speaking. He noticed that my body said something, it, jumped, or for whatever reason, he noticed some emotion come up with me. He jumped on it, brought it to my conscious awareness. And as soon as I brought my conscious awareness to it, my body literally went, and it literally passed through.
Mm.
And this is the great thing about, working somatically or working with the body. You don't even have to know what it's about. You don't have to know, what it's connected to. You don't really have to go back to your childhood. And if you don't want to, you can literally stay with the physical experience that you're having. And because you're doing that, it's way less overwhelming because you're not getting caught up in the story. So,
Yeah.
for example, like I remember sort of getting left at nursery and crying my eyes out. Now, as an adult, I can look back and think, oh, nothing really happened. I was, just the normal getting left at nursery. It's a very normal thing. But at the time, it may have been the first time that my mum was leaving me and I was away from this person who was keeping me safe. To me, that was terrifying at that age. Mm-hmm. And I may have not even recognized that. But if I got into the sort of story, the story may have been, I'm not lovable, mum doesn't love me, I'm not safe, all this kind of thing. That in itself is what's actually triggering the most of the emotions, the story. But if we stay with the physical sensations and go, oh, I've got this tight chest, or oh, I feel a bit kind of anxious in my belly, that's not too overwhelming because there's no story connects to it. And then that enables us to kind of let it go. So that's mostly the difference between kind of like cognitive top-down work and bottom-up somatic work. Mm. You're working with literally just what you're feeling in the body, and you can release it without having to know all the details. But with the somatic release, once you've actually released it, you get most of the closure anyway. Then you get the understanding because once you've let go of the emotion, the logic, the rational part actually comes back online and you see things for what things actually are,
Then, yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, I remember we used the analogy last time. It's like it's like smelling smoke in a building and the fire alarm being off and trying to find out where the smoke's coming from. But you're so panicked by the alarm that you're just a lot more irrational and a lot less kind of methodical. So it's like you're running around like a headless chicken in this building with the fire alarm so loud that you can't hear or kind of like focusing on the thing, trying to find the fire. Whereas if you time the alarm off first, like, okay, I've noticed that there's something not quite right, alarm off, where's the smoke coming from? And then you can be like, oh yeah, it's coming from that. Okay, sweet, it's just the toaster, switch it off.
And that's that bottom up process. So first we're focusing on just literally either slowing down the breath or slowing down the body, just enough till the alarm turns off. Once the alarm turns off, you can actually pay attention to what's happening in the body. Then you can actually notice, what am I feeling? Once we then deal with the emotions, the emotions clear, then the thoughts naturally stop because we don't recognize that it's the emotions that's fueling the thoughts. Like whenever we have a looping thought, so whenever we think about something more than once, that's your body literally saying, hey, you feel a certain way about something, we're trying to get you to feel, because our emotions, it's energy in motion, it has to pass through us. Whenever we're feeling our emotions, they're actually on their way out. But we feel so overwhelmed when we're feeling them because we have these thoughts where you think, oh my God, I don't want to get stuck feeling this way. So we kind of suppress it, we contain it. If you just trusted your body and allowed yourself to just surrender into it, it will just pass through. But we don't know that because we don't feel safe because it's only us having that experience with ourselves. And that's the importance of connection. When we have connection with a safe other, when we're being co-regulated, we feel safer to have the experience we're having. And I always kind of share this kind of story with my clients, and I sort of share the story where my sister told me that she was steering one of her friend's boats out at sea for whatever reason. And she was steering this boat, and boats, when you're sort of steering it sometimes will tip. And this boat started really sort of tipping, and she's thinking, oh my God, I'm going to capsize the ship, we're going to die. She's kind of thinking all these kind of anxious thoughts. But because his body was so relaxed, his body was basically telling her, this is completely normal, this is safe. He was absolutely fine in the experience. Now, without a single word even being said, his body was saying, this is okay. And because of that, she started to relax because he was okay with the experience that they was both having. Essentially, that's what, the somatic sort of therapy is about. I'm completely okay with what you're experiencing. Your body's then listening to my body, and your body goes, oh, I'm completely okay with what you're experiencing because it's very normal to me. And this is something that goes beyond cognitive or conscious even acknowledgement. It's your body's actually listening to my body, and then your body starts to feel safe to explore whatever you need to explore. And then once you then get used to that, you're able to then do the same process through self-regulation because you start to understand it. Just like, when you're practicing learning how to drive a car, you're going through the process, you're doing your mirror signal maneuver, someone's guiding you through it. Eventually you can do it on your own consciously, and eventually you can do it without even thinking about it. That's just through practice.
I remember that when I first started learning to drive, I was like, how the hell am I going to remember when I'm on a busy dual carriageway or a roundabout to do my mirror signal maneuver and put my foot on the clutch? And then all of that, I was like, how am I ever going to do it? How do people make it look so easy? And then after like 3 weeks of driving, you're like, oh yeah, what the hell? Why did that look like it was impossible? Now I'm just doing it like without even thinking about it.
It's that muscle memory, right?
Yeah, and it's the same with this. Like, I mean, um, we've done our breathing techniques. Like I said earlier, I've also done a bit of the Wim Hof stuff, and like now, like you do the main ones, like the deep breathing for 30 seconds, and then the breath hold, and then the breath, like then bringing it back, and then going back into deep breathing, and you get access to this nuts feeling of like calm and like relaxed state. And now I can do it even if I was kind of like sat at breakfast or something. You can do like a mini one, and you get access to those feelings so quickly. Not quite as much calm as you have when you're able to fully go for it, but once you've got it a little bit, even now, just a couple deep breaths, and you're like, okay, sweet. I've like, it just becomes a lot more natural, and comes to you a lot quicker, and allows you to get into that green state a lot quicker.
Well, let's talk a little bit kind of about that then. So, if we was to break down essentially what's happening, is that when we're breathing in like a circular fashion. So with Wim Hof, they do the rapid breathing. It's like a 1 in, 1 out, or 2 in, 2 out. It's quite rapid sort of breathing. That's actually creating a lot of activation in the body. So typically, with anyone with anxiety, I wouldn't recommend Wim Hof to begin with. I would recommend something like coherent breathing, or something it's like a 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Because what's important is the ratio from inhale to exhale and the rate of breathing. So how many breaths you're taking per minute. So when we breathe in, we put on the foot on the accelerator. When we breathe out, we put on the foot on the brakes. So when we're kind of breathing in and out, it's creating a nice balanced effect on the nervous system. But when you're breathing quite rapidly, that's charging the system up. So when we think of our breath as like our life force or energy, when we're building all that energy up in the body, and as you're doing that, you're connecting to your body, and that gets your energy flowing through you. Now, sometimes this is why people have these big emotional releases, because that energy is flowing through you. It's unlocking because you're connecting to your body, and that energy is now flowing through any kind of blockages in your body, and it's waking it up. Now, if you don't have very good emotional regulation, when you start experiencing those emotions, it can be really overwhelming. So then when we then go into the breath hold, you're breathing all the way in, breathing all the way out, and we're holding it at the bottom. And when you hold at the bottom, you're putting your foot on the brakes, basically. As you put on the brakes, you're allowing your whole body and your whole system to calm down. Now, this is what you want to do. If you're feeling overwhelmed, or say, for example, you're doing any kind of breathing, something like that, I find the easy thing to do is just take a nice breath in, let it go, and then just hold at the bottom. Because when we do all this kind of like, they say breathe for 4, hold for 7, breathe out for 8. If anybody's experiencing anxiety and they've had a panic attack, when you're going, there's no breath counting happening. That's going to go straight out the window. But what you can do is hold your breath. So you want to breathe in, breathe out, hold your breath at the bottom. That's the simplest thing. And then when we're breathing in and holding it at the top with the Wim Hof, all your energy is then shooting up your body. And then you're feeling that kind of pretty much drive up from your root, all the way up your spine, all the way up to your kind of crown. And that's what you feel. You feel that high effect. But for anxiety, what most people just begin with is learn how to just move that energy through your body with your breath. And that's kind of like a nice 4 in, 4 out, very simple to kind of start with, because it's not going to overwhelm the system too much. And even doing that literally for 5 minutes will calm your body down physiologically. Yeah. Whether you believe it or not, you don't have to believe it, because this is just how your body works. And you want to practice kind of breathing into your belly. And what we don't recognize is that the breath is the only action is the inhale. So a lot of times you think you breathe in and you breathe out. The breathe out is actually a release. So if you breathe properly, you're releasing every single breath. So rather than, we don't recognize that we do it, but this is kind of like what it sounds like. We're just breathing in, and then it's a we practice that. We practice just letting go. It really helps the body to let go. And if you want to, what I've basically brought this down to with, if I'm sort of helping somebody work through things, is literally practicing that breath, breathing all the way in, breathing all the way out, letting it go, and then holding your breath at the bottom. If you do that for like 5 to 10 breaths, your body will massively apply the brakes, and it'll be easy and safe to let go. Because if you're at like a 10 out of 10 stress, if I say surrender and just let go into the feelings, your body's going to say, fuck that. That's way too intense. If we can bring the intensity down, which is what regulate basically means, if we can get down to like a 2 or even a 3 or 4, your body's going to feel a lot safer just to allow yourself to feel that feeling. And that's what it's about, being able to just fully trust your body and surrender into it. But that's why I like things like the Wim Hof and Soma breath. So Soma breath is similar to the Wim Hof. I'm a Soma breath coach. And with that, they do roughly like a 2 in, 4 out, or 4 in, 4 out breath for about 7-8 minutes. It's building that energy up. And the same thing, breathing all the way in and then all the way out and holding for as long as you can. Now, when you're holding at the bottom, because you're fully surrendered into it, it's easy to actually relax, because even though we're breathing, our diaphragm's still activating, our stomach muscles can still be quite tense and tight, and you allow yourself to actually soften and surrender. And very rarely are we ever just being completely still. But being able to hold your breath at that bottom where we're actually applying the brakes, it allows everything to calm down, and then you can actually then, be with yourself in that moment. And it also helps being able to relax into the stress where your body's thinking, oh my God, I need to breathe, And because you're focusing on your breath, you're bringing yourself into the present moment, which is exactly what, anyone with anxiety is experiencing. They're not here. They're not now. You're thinking about something which isn't even here. And that's what's creating the anxiety. If I sat there thinking about, my family dying in a car crash every 5 minutes, it's going to be anxiety inducing. But we don't recognize that we're at cause and not effect. It's not happening to us. We're doing this, but we're doing this unconsciously. We're doing it because our subconscious is driving us to have these thoughts, because it's literally saying, hey, there's some emotions in your body that you need to feel. I'm going to make you have these thoughts to try to get you to feel these feelings because you need to heal. I need your help to kind of work through these feelings. It needs your conscious attention. I've had clients where they've experienced really bad OCD, where they've thought about, harming their children, and they've never hurt their kids. But it's just literally asking, when you have this thought, how does it make you feel? Guilt, shame, upset, anxious, scared. And guess what the emotions is that they need to feel? Those same feelings. So you have to kind of completely ignore what's happening in your head and just listen, what's actually happening in my body right now? But that's what we don't do. We're just not connected enough to our bodies,
It's so interesting. You're so right, like that. The OCD thing, I had the same thing when I think I was like 17, I used to worry repeatedly about my hairline, like for years. Like it was just a same thing, like these thoughts going on in my head. Oh my God, what happens if my hair falls out? What happens if, oh my God, has it gone back? It doesn't look like it's gone back from that photo, but maybe the light was slightly different. I remember I was like driving myself insane, like looped thoughts. I couldn't, someone talk to me and I just wouldn't be there because I was like just thinking about my hairline. And it was so weird. I was like, the hairline wasn't the problem. The problem was that I just wasn't feeling something that I was meant to feel. And so my brain was trying to come up with some story to be like, and I didn't realize that. So I thought the only way to feel better was to like keep checking my hairline, which is what people with OCD have, right? Oh my God, I don't feel like I've washed my hands well enough, so I'm going to go and wash them again. They're not, the problem actually isn't their hands being clean, and the problem is the fact that they're just feeling anxiety and they don't feel comfortable feeling it. So they pin it on something practical that they can then do and feel like they have a full sense of control.
And that's it. Like, we don't recognize that your thoughts are literally a way to escape your body. It's a way to kind of escape your body to a place of safety in your head. But because your body needs you to feel, because it's overwhelming when we're kind of containing our emotions and we don't recognize we're doing it. It's like our foot's on the accelerator and our foot's on the brake, and we're kind of not going anywhere, but it's like that energy is just building up in the system. And this is why it's so draining. That's why if you're in that red zone, you're lethargic. You can't get out of your bed. You're tired all the time. You haven't got no energy to do anything. It's because your body is literally so overwhelmed, but you can't feel it because you've literally got both those accelerator and brake pressed down. And the answer's never in your head. That's why, like I say to people, typically doing a single session, we need to do a little bit more because there's layers to it. Because most of the time, the thing that you think is the issue is really the issue. It's like that's what your mind has created because that's what that's what it's created because it knows that's going to have its biggest effect on you. So it's typically aiming for your biggest insecurities. And problem is with our biggest insecurities, because we feel ashamed or we feel judge ourselves, it's our vulnerable thoughts and feelings. We don't reach out. We kind of then question, is there something wrong with me? But we think like, oh, this isn't as bad as what other people have. So we invalidate what we're feeling. But ultimately what it comes down to is not that, we're not aiming to feel good. We're aiming just to be authentic, to allow ourselves just to be us. You don't have to be healed or you don't have to be perfect. We don't have to kind of get to a certain place. And ultimately it's about allowing yourself to have the thoughts you're having, to feel what you're feeling, and accept both your thoughts and your feelings. And if you can accept how you feel, you can allow it to pass through. And in doing that, acceptance is essentially what love is. It's basically saying, even though I feel these feelings, I accept and love myself as it is. But when we resist, we avoid or judge, you naturally stop the natural healing process. Instead, we have to just truly accept and go, right now, I'm feeling what I'm feeling. But it's like, we'll feel what we're feeling and we go, oh, can't allow myself to feel that. And sometimes this is conditioning or the rules that we're following. So initially, to start with, we have to recognize if we have these kind of belief systems. And sometimes, people get caught up with the word belief, because if I say you have this negative belief, people go, oh, I don't believe that. But sometimes it's not so much a belief, but like a rule. So we could have these kind of beliefs where we think, it's not safe to be vulnerable, or it's not safe to express my feelings, or being vulnerable is bad, or showing my emotions is weak. Now, if we've had any conditioning like that, you will find it difficult to express your emotions, especially to someone safe that can actually receive them. And then what happens? Your emotions build up in your system. And it may not even be anything big you've experienced, like say anything traumatic. It can literally just be a build up of stress and emotions. And it comes down to a point when, the straw that broke the camel's back, and now all of a sudden you're feeling a lot of anxiety build up because we just don't allow ourselves to feel. So it's recognizing, how comfortable are you with vulnerability? How much you express how you're feeling? Do you have any safe people in your life where you can just truly tell exactly what you're thinking and feeling and know that it's going to be received? Now, this is where sometimes people get stuck, because when your friends and family are close to you, because they care about you so much, they don't want you feeling a certain way. So say, for example, if you was to go to, if I was going to my mum and I was to tell her how I was feeling, if I was kind of like really sort of struggling, she would worry. She would then get into the yellow zone response. So if I'm in that yellow zone, because she cares about me, she loves me, she then worries and goes, oh, I need you to be okay. But unconsciously, without her meaning to, that's essentially saying, I can't accept you right now because it's making me dysregulated, and I need you to change to make me feel better.
Yeah.
Now, that's not how she's meaning it, but that's how our body perceives it. And because she's in that yellow zone and I'm in that yellow zone, we just reinforce the same pattern.
Yeah.
But what we need is, and it's we can only express what we can to somebody who has the capacity to be with it without getting overwhelmed or getting triggered in that sort of state. And sometimes without getting overwhelmed, people kind of think that they're strong and they're okay when they're actually just disconnecting. They're actually not connecting to your body, you're not connecting to your breath. And same like even having this conversation, there's been moments where I've kind of been, oh, what should I sort of say next? I've kind of been in my head. I'm thinking, oh, I'm not connected to my belly. And that's the moment I have to go, okay, bring myself back, connect to my breath, connect to my body, and just bring myself back into connection. Because that's essentially how we heal, If you're expressing to me and you're talking about something which I also resonate or relate to, and I have empathy because I know how you feel, what that's actually doing is it's triggering me into my own emotions too, and it's bringing up my unresolved stuff. Now, if I then get into that yellow red zone state, what my body's then saying is saying that my state I'm in is the state to be in, and that's already the state that you're in already. So you basically get confirmed to stay in the state that you're in. Versus if I have worked and I accept that vulnerable part of what is coming up for you within me, because I'm completely okay with that part, I can accept it, I can stay in that green zone. And then what my body is saying to you, my body's saying, I can accept this vulnerable part that you have within me. So if I can accept it within me, then I can accept it within you. And if I can accept it within you, then you can accept it within you. And then that's how healing happens. But say, for example, in the case of my mum, I could be in that yellow zone state where I'm feeling a bit stressed, a bit anxious. She's in that yellow zone state as well. Her body's saying, I can't accept this in me. I can't accept this in you. And then my body's like, well, I can't accept what I'm feeling, so it must be bad. And then it stops you from actually feeling it. But if you just had someone saying, hey, if you just...
Same thing. I remember my mum saying, like, you're only as happy as your least happy child.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, fuck. And then it makes you kind of panic even more, because I know, like, I imagine if that was my son or my mom was feeling, like I was back in 2019 when it was pretty shit for a couple months, like, I don't know how much that would have panicked me. And I would have wanted to check in with her every 2 minutes, being like, how you feeling now? You're right now? You feeling better? Have you woken up feeling a bit better today? And then I know that that's how I would have felt in that position. So I then didn't want to talk to my mom, because I don't want to inflict that on her, because I know that I'm fine. Okay, yeah, I'm not, where I should, back in that time, I knew I wasn't right, but I also knew that I knew there was light at the end of the tunnel. I knew I would be okay. So I'm like, okay, stop asking me how I'm feeling, because the answer is the same as it was yesterday, but in a couple months' time or a couple weeks' time, it will be different and I will be okay. But you stressing about me is only stressing me out more and lengthening that time of me getting better. You kind of just need to, like, I don't know. I mean, a part of it, of course, you need to reach out and get help and speak to people, as you say, that can have the capacity to do it, or that are, far removed enough, like a therapist, who can give you what you need without taking it home with them. But then also kind of like doing the healing on your own, because yeah, you're right. When you kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say something that's like counterproductive to people not speaking about their feelings, but like part of it you need to get help from someone. Of course, speaking about things is the first step, 100%. There's no doubt about that. But also, kind of, you don't want to panic other people unnecessarily, I guess, because that only then creates more inner turmoil.
So I'll jump on that because this comes up with my clients quite a bit, and it's because sometimes like people get caught and it's like, oh, it's good to express my feelings, but you have to have good boundaries of who you express your feelings to.
Mm,
So it's just kind of like having that awareness where you think, does this person have the emotional capacity to hold space for me? Because that's what essentially holding space is. Is this person regulated in a green zone enough where I can say what I can say, with them being completely okay with them not being affected by what I can say?
yeah,
And sometimes, like you said, if it's someone close to you, they have too much emotional attachment because they care about you so much. Like I'm the same. If it comes down to, something with my girlfriend, because it directly impacts me whether she's in this state or she's not in that state, I want her to kind of be better. I'm really attached to
yeah,
the outcome. And then it's like what that feels like for the other person is like, I can't accept you right now. I need you to change. I need you to be fixed.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
feels like a rejection. We feel even worse because we're like, fuck, I'm feeling bad myself as it is. I know I'm now impacting other people around me. Then that adds
Yeah.
more pressure to what I'm feeling. So it's just
And then you're like, well,
recognizing,
just heal quicker, and then you just
yeah,
report the situation by panicking, being like waking up, thinking, "Am I better? No, fuck,
yeah,
am I not better?" So you kind of just need to like balance, like, and I guess that comes from your. I had the same thing with my girlfriend. Is like, I want to tell her how I'm feeling because that's the person
mm.
closest to you, but equally, I don't want to make it her problem as well because she's not going to fix me. So her feeling shit about me feeling a bit not right is just going to make the problem a little bit worse. It's kind of like check in when you need to check in, but also know that the healing comes from you. Nothing that she says or does, apart from giving you love, obviously. But she's not going to heal it. You've got to heal from within. So it's kind of that balance between making sure people are, up to date with how you're feeling, but also not kind of just burdening them with it because
But
yeah,
what kind of like, people get caught up with is the story. So they'll tell the story to their partner and or their friend or whoever they're kind of close to, and then sometimes that kind of makes it worse because they go into kind of like fixing mode when they go into like, because I had it once, right? A few months back, I was at my mum's and I was going through some stuff with my girlfriend, and she was like, "Oh, why don't you do this?" or "You should do this, you should do that," and I was like, "Mum," I was like, "I don't need your advice." I was like, no offense, but if I was going to take a relationship advice from anyone, it probably would be from you. Like, no offense, but I just need you just to listen to me. Can you just listen to me and be okay with what I'm saying and just give me some love and just give me a hug? And she's like, yeah, I can do that. And sometimes that's the problem. We don't know what it is that we need. So the two questions that I kind of really get people to kind of focus on is, what do you feel and what do you need? If you can connect what am I feeling in this moment and think, don't get too into corporate story. People go, oh, I'm noticing I'm feeling a bit self-anxious. Anxiety is just basically feeling scared. So a lot of people then go, oh, why am I feeling scared? What have I got to be scared about? Why is this feeling coming up to me? What's this really about? That just gets you deep into the feeling or deep into the problem. So you literally just have to ask, if I'm feeling what I'm feeling, what do I need? Now, 9 times out of 10, it's like hug, it's connection, it's touch. Touch is very therapeutic. So if you can just look, do you have anyone close to you? If you can just go, what am I feeling? What do I need? And just say to them, I need a hug. Or can you just be with me and just, can we just be present? Or can we just, go for a walk? Or can we just do something together or something like that?
yeah,
Whatever it is that you need, that's how you can get your help from the people closest to you. Because rather than burdening them with the story of whatever's going on, just say to them, I'm feeling a little bit sort of stressed. Can you give me a hug? Now,
yeah,
most people are just going to say yeah. And you literally, if you are contained, because that's what it is, it's like that physical container. If you are being hugged, what will happen? I guarantee within a minute or so, your body will literally get to that point where it goes, and you'll feel that physical drop down. And
I
that's
remember
what it
this
is.
so clearly when last year when I was going through my breakup, and like, although I knew it was the right decision, of course, it's still sad
Mm.
because with that person that you spent most of your time with for the last few years, or the last year. And I remember I just came into the kitchen. I was home one weekend. My brother was there, and I was just like on the verge of tears. And my brother just came up. He's a very emotionally intelligent person. He just came up and he's like, "You're right, mate." I was like, he's like, "What are you feeling?" I was like, "I just feel sad." He just gave me a hug. So all he didn't say anything. He didn't try to be like, "Oh, but you made the right decision. You know, you're not
Mm-hmm.
meant to do it." He didn't do any of that. He just was like, "Oh, mate, what are you feeling?" I was like, "I feel really sad." I burst into tears. And he just gave me a hug. and then we just went for, I think we just went for a walk or something, and I was like, I'm better now. Just had a
That's
wave,
it.
just had a wave of sadness, and he just knew straight away, mate, have a hug. Gave me a hug, and I was like, it's all I needed in that moment, and it just passed through. And it's more often than not, that's just what it is. It's just like just having an emotion that's quite overwhelming.
And what that basically is, that hug, it's connection. It's someone saying that, we're okay in this moment. If I'm opening up my vulnerable part, my center, and I'm, I'll be basically having a heart-to-heart connection. I'll be basically saying, I'm okay, you're okay, we're okay in this moment. And then just allowing ourselves, it's the acceptance. It's saying, I can accept you right now because I'm loving and accepting you. So, if there was one bit of advice I'd say to anyone that is kind of listening to this at some point, is if you want to help the person that is struggling, just give them a hug. Just have more hugs and just be with them. Don't try and fix them. Don't try and change them. Just say, hey, do you want me just to be with you? And if you're being with them, focus on how you're feeling. If you can want to help someone else, the best way you can help them is by helping yourself, by relaxing your body around them. So most of the time now, how I'm helping people is literally, it sounds kind of like, almost like egotistical, but I'm helping people just by being present, just by paying attention to myself, to them, and relaxing. And my body's then going to speak to your body to say, I'm here with you in this moment. I'm okay. So I'm okay with what you're experiencing. Your body then goes, oh, maybe I can be okay. Yeah. And then it starts to relax with time. So if anyone wants to help everyone else, just connect to what you're feeling. Notice what happens in your body in connection to what somebody else is feeling, with your, what they're experiencing. Connect your breath. See how much you can relax into your body. And it will be easier for you to relax into your body because it's not really directly associated to you. You don't even know what's happening with that person. And if you can do that or give them a hug, that will solve 90% of the problems. It won't fix their life, but it will change their state. So this is the thing. We're not trying to change someone's lives in terms of what's happening with them. But nobody can change their life when they're in these survival modes. You have to get yourself back to that green zone of connection where then you can go, right, now I'm thinking rationally, now I can take action, now I can move forwards. And then we can go from there,
100%.
So, Toby, if you was to kind of give some advice to anybody who's experiencing anxiety, what would you say to them before we finish?
I would say work out, I guess the main thing is work out what I don't know. I guess what I don't want to do is knock CBT, because I know for some people CBT and that top-up approach is what is needed, if that's what you think is going on. But for most people, I would say that this bottom-up approach and somatic therapy is something that's massively helped me, and I feel like it's the answer to a lot of people's problems. So I'd say 100% reach out, get in contact with someone like yourself that does it. And once you can start to feel calm in your body and realize that if you can feel calm in that moment, it then gives you hope to realize that you can feel calm long term. And by doing that takes away a lot of the cortisol and a lot of the stress, which allows you to heal a lot quicker. For me, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a long process, and it feels so shit right now that it was almost like I was in like boiling hot water, and I was like, I don't know which way to swim. Whereas when you can get into the body and be like, okay, we can turn the alarm off, and then we can work with a long-term approach to overcome this and to get back to yourself. But it all starts from you kind of, somatic therapy and this kind of connecting to the breath, connecting to the body gives you that instant relief, turning off the alarm to then look at the long-term relief. Whereas I was kind of like looking at all of these things for long-term relief without looking at the immediate thing, which was inside me. So learning to turn the alarm off is the key to long-term healing. And
that's the thing, like a lot of times it's more like this is just a life skill. Being able to connect to your body, notice what you're feeling, be with yourself, the emotional regulation, emotional intelligence. Personality-wise, I'm an INTJ. They're like the robots of the humans. My ex-girlfriend used to say, she used to joke, and she'd say, she used to teach me how to be a human. Now, if I can learn emotional intelligence and learn all this, then absolutely anyone else can. So if you are interested in learning this, I'd love you to kind of reach out. You can typically find me on Instagram at Anxiety Specialist. If anybody wants to reach out to you, Toby, I think you're on Instagram as well. Do you know what your handle is?
Toby_Watkins is the one.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. So thank you guys for listening. I appreciate your time if you have spent the time listening to us. I am here if you do want to reach out, and I'd love to speak to you soon.
Sweet, man.